Konnichiwa. Good. It's a great privilege to have the opportunity to be with you. Before I begin, though, I would like to thank Chairman Hanyu and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for inviting me to speak to you and for your work to strengthen the relationship between our two countries. I do admire the Foundation's mission to seek creative ways for nations and citizens to foster greater prosperity around the world, and I am honored, Hanyu-san, to be a small part of this greater conversation. The 21st century is the Asia-Pacific century. President Obama and his administration have acknowledged this reality through the changes they've made to U.S. foreign policy over the past 3 years. They've indicated that America's future in the world will increasingly be defined by our role as a Pacific nation, in partnership with allies and friends such as Japan. So today I will talk about the Pacific century and the future of the U.S.-Japan alliance in that context. And I will focus my remarks upon three major areas: regional security, economic security, and energy security, where I see the greatest opportunities for cooperation between our two countries going forward. In recent months, President Obama has made clear that the U.S. sees its future in Asia. Now, let me be clear. As America's oldest ally in the region, Japan will be central to that effort. President Obama called our treaty alliance and the partnership between our two countries the cornerstone of regional security in his remarks in Australia. Secretary Clinton echoed the president, arguing that our shared values, ongoing security efforts, and strong economic ties bring the promise of Asia, of America's Pacific century, to life. For proof of that strength and enduring commitment of our alliance, I think we have to look no further than the response to the tragic disaster Japan suffered on 3/11. Too few Americans probably realize that the name for that operation, Tomodachi, is Japanese for friend, but Americans were deeply impressed by how rapidly and effectively our two nations worked together in the face of such tremendous challenge. And we continue to be impressed by the extraordinary resilience Japan has shown and how bravely the people of Japan have responded, committing to build an even stronger Japan in the future. Regardless of what happens at home, opportunities to strengthen the cooperation between our two countries will remain. And it's critical that the United States and Japan continue to take advantage of them going forward. The most pressing is North Korea, where today's failed test of a 130-foot missile, which if perfected could deliver a warhead more than 6,000 miles, we saw as a profound challenge to both our countries. Today's launch demonstrates complete disregard for regional security and for international law. North Korea's actions threaten the safety of its neighbors and will result in the further isolation of the backward regime in Pyongyang. Once again, Pyongyang has closed the door on an opportunity to take a step to join the civilized nations of the world in stopping the spread of weapons of mass destruction. The United States is enormously grateful for the leadership Japan has demonstrated in partnership with our allies in South Korea to show that North Korea's nuclear ambitions put the country completely out of step with the rest of Asia and the Pacific. I also want to take a moment to recognize Japan's leadership in another part of Asia, its commitment to a stable Afghanistan in this regard. Thanks to a financial commitment made in 2009, Japan is providing a significant share of the salaries for Afghan's new security forces, as well as infrastructure funds and vocational training programs for former fighters. Yet even as we work together to address these ongoing challenges, we also must adapt our security strategy to account for emerging nations that are playing an increasingly larger role in global affairs. The United States strongly believes that the rise of one country need not come at the expense of another, and that power does not need to be a zero-sum game. This is particularly relevant to China. To keep our relationship growing in a positive direction, the Chinese government will have to do, I think, a better job of abiding by global trade rules and providing a level playing field. And the United States and Japan should work together to address these trade issues and to promote business models based on trust and mutual respect. To that end, one of the biggest challenges we will face over the next years is the challenge of strategic trust. In many ways, the U.S. and Japan are still getting to know China, and that means misunderstandings are still possible. The Obama administration renewed focus on the Asia-Pacific has generated suspicion among some that the U.S. is seeking to contain China's rise. But it's important to remember that the United States is itself a Pacific country that has long supported China's growth and development. Ultimately, the recent rebalancing of U.S. foreign policy aims to help our countries and the region work and grow together and create a more stable framework. Elsewhere on the economic front, the greatest and perhaps most controversial opportunity for closer collaboration between our two countries is the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations that the chairman mentioned. There is no question that Japan's full participation in the TPP is in the strong economic interest of the United States, in my judgment. U.S. trade with TPP economies covers just over 5% of total U.S. trade, but with Japan, this almost doubles. In fact, as the third largest global economy, Japan's participation would make the agreement a far more dynamic and impactful one, particularly if the other NAFTA partners were included in the agreement. The Obama administration, for its part, has continued to push for conclusion of the agreement this year, even in an election year, because the president believes the partnership will foster the kind of regional competition that will create stronger, more stable domestic economies in each of the partner nations. And the administration will continue to work with its Japanese counterparts on a path forward for the negotiations that is in the best interests of all parties involved. The United States and Japan should continue working through APEC and through other regional economic partnerships to advance clean energy and climate goals. One specific proposal for using regional agreements to make progress on clean energy focuses on building out smart grid technology. As you know from when some of your plants went offline after the earthquake, Japan's grid itself faces major challenges already and will face even greater challenges as you move toward smarter systems needed to bring massive quantities of renewable energy onto the grid. Building smarter electric grids requires flexibility and innovation. And because many nations are just beginning this process, smart grid technologies and best practices could be developed better and faster through collaborative efforts between many countries at once. The U.S. and Japan, with our shared technology leadership, are well suited to lead that international effort on smart grid development. And through APEC, they already have a forum in which to do so. Fortunately, the United States is in a strong position to help Japan reduce its growing reliance on foreign oil. And the biggest thing we can do in the near term and in the midterm is to allow Japan to import some of our vast natural gas supply. Japan, for its part, is already importing more natural gas to help make up for its lost nuclear capacity. Japan imported 12% more natural gas than it did, imported 12% more last year than it did in 2010. But most of that gas comes from Asian markets. and from the Middle East at prices that are 4 times higher than natural gas prices in the United States today. Together with increased oil imports, these costly gas purchases have helped eliminate Japan's trade surplus and caused energy prices to soar. America's natural gas can help fill the gap, and America has an interest in helping fulfill Japan's energy needs. The fracking boom in the U.S. has caused supply to grow dramatically, and natural gas prices in the U.S. are actually too low for many companies to be able to profitably extract and sell natural gas domestically. So there's room to give these companies the ability to export some natural gas to other markets that are currently dependent on more expensive supplies. Most importantly, it's in our shared interest to reduce our reliance on energy that comes from unstable and potentially hostile regimes. And as two of the world's largest oil importers, working to reduce our dependence on oil sends a powerful signal to the global community that we're seriously and soberly working to address that threat. But energy cooperation is, of course, just one part of our relationship. And as I've discussed here today, the United States values Japan's partnership immensely, whether we're working together to build a sustainable economy, to increase bilateral trade, to provide for security, or to support regional institutions to which both our nations are partner. Strengthening our partnership in all these areas is of vital interest to both our country. It's a big agenda, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's a worthy one. As the United States begins its Pacific century, we cannot succeed without Japan's cooperation and support. Japan will have a strong ally in the United States to help you meet your energy, economic, and security goals. And for the region, the U.S.-Japan alliance is just as critical. Our partnership has allowed for growth and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific over the past 50 years, and the region will continue to look to both of our countries for leadership going forward over the next 50 years. That the United States has turned towards the Asia-Pacific reflects this reality, and I see a bright future for the U.S.-Japan alliance as a result. So I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you very much. I think it fundamentally stems from our treaty alliance and the security that we've provided in this region over the last 50 years. And as I noted, moving forward, I think that being well aligned on the security posture of both the U.S. Forces deployed and available to the Asia-Pacific region, as well as the self-defense forces that Japan maintains, is an important stabilizer to create a stable region and to stop provocative activity that could, if left unchecked, begin to cause the Chinese to take actions that would be unwarranted. Ultimately, I think the peaceful rise of China is going to come by integrating China into the as I think we've begun to do in the economic sphere, into other multilateral mechanisms that recognize the weight that China has in the world and demands that it play to that weight and play fairly in a globalized system that benefits everyone. I think that one of the things that really has to happen at the beginning is that there has to be a common and shared perspective between our defense forces about what the Chinese strategy is, in particular the anti-access area denial strategy that the Chinese are employing. And I think from that common understanding of what the Chinese strategic doctrine is, can come better alignment and better understanding about what the U.S. force role is and what the Japanese force role is in order to counter that. I think the decision to purchase the F-35 is also, I think, an important one in terms of making clear that the joint operability will be a thing of the future as well as a thing of the past.